Right, hello, good afternoon. Welcome to the final session of the afternoon here in the Academy. It's a one-on-one with Darren Eales, president of the MLS team Atlanta United. Now, Atlanta United, they share their home and their owner with Arthur Blank and with the NFL team, the Atlanta Falcons, and they've just completed a $1.5 billion build of the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, claimed to be a world-class sports and entertainment venue. Let's take a look. Darren, thank you very much for joining us here this afternoon. I have to confess, watching that, I'm very envious, having gone through our Ashton Gate Stadium rebuild at a lot lower cost. It is an impressive facility. Just talk us through the vision behind the build.
Yeah, afternoon everyone. I mean, it's an amazing stadium. We saw a sort of brief clip of it there. I think the first thing, I'll give credit to Arthur Blank, our owner. So Arthur Blank owns the Atlanta Falcons, started up Home Depot, is one of the founders of Home Depot that ended up being one of the biggest retailers in the world. But he put a lot of thought into this building as to, one, make it iconic, so different from other stadiums, not just a cookie cutter sort of basic concept. Now that comes with a cost to it, as we'll perhaps talk about later, in terms of actually getting the stadium built. But the other big thing was he wanted it to be multi-use. So importantly, between soccer and American football, there's a couple of key factors of this stadium that makes it work for both teams. So we have seats that retract, so a narrower field for American football. So we've got the ability to retract seats, so we can have a full-size pitch for the Atlanta United team, but also for the World Cup. Hopefully in 2026, that's going to be coming to America, and we can fit a full-size FIFA pitch in on without doing any building work. So that was important. Also, we've got the ability to downsize the stadium. So it can be 70,000 for American football. We have a curtain system on the top bowl that comes vertically down, so it kills the volume, makes it feel more intimate, makes it feel like Atlanta United Stadium when we're playing. So all of these things come with a cost, but it was all done with the forethought that this shouldn't just be a stadium for the NFL team. This should be a stadium that can host concerts as well as Atlanta United games and Falcons games.
I mean, we can see from some of the pictures, I saw the digital signage boards as well that wrap round that envelope inside. I guess having such a truly digital stadium allows you to switch between codes, different sports and different events.
Absolutely. I mean, it's crazy. So only in America they do everything big. So it's a halo board that goes around the whole inside of the roof, and it's a 6-story building high. So, if you think about the size and scale of that, then it loops the whole way around. So that is your halo board. Then we have a mega column that's actually bigger than about 10 of the NFL teams' main scoreboard. That's just an afterthought. That's there sort of on the side. But the great thing about it, Lisa, is we can just flick a switch. So it goes from Atlanta United one day on a Saturday evening. So we've got it in 2 weeks' time. We'll be playing Orlando City. We're going to open up the whole stadium, hopefully break the record for Major League Soccer with 70,000 soccer fans. That's a Saturday evening, and then the next day we'll flick a switch. It'll all change to Atlanta Falcons signage, and they'll be hosting Green Bay Packers in their very first regular season game. So it's pretty exciting.
Fingers crossed it does all happen with the flick of a switch, because I know that when you agreed to come to do SoccerX, you were meant to be in your stadium, all open, all very calm.
Yeah, no, it was going to be nice. 2 months in the stadium. I'd be talking about what had happened. Yeah, and we had a slight delay. So we actually opened the stadium on Sunday. So we're 6 days away from Atlanta United's first game against FC Dallas. So it's, if I look a bit stressful, that's part of the reason.
And how difficult has the journey been? Because it's quite an interesting journey. I mean, everyone obviously realizing you have an English accent. You were born and bred in England, but then studied in America, then came back here to work with West Brom and with Tottenham, and then have gone back. How hard has it been translating that culture of football to a new city, but also for them to adopt a new club?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think my background really helped. So I went over, I was a failed footballer at Cambridge United, went over on a scholarship to play in America, and then when I graduated, it was the year before Major League Soccer started. So I played in the A-League in New York. And this was when the concept was Americans couldn't get soccer. So it was about Americanizing it. How do we make it higher scoring? So the year I played in the league, we had a team foul system like basketball. I mean, crazy when you think about it. We had kick-ins rather than throw-ins. They were trying anything they could to Americanize the game. And the problem with that was those people that loved the game felt that this was false and wrong. And those people sitting on the fence weren't really drawn in by these gimmicky ideas. What Major League Soccer's done really well, if we now go 22 years later, is they kept it authentic, and America's caught up with the rest of the world. And what you have now is an amazingly young, diverse, passionate fan base that loves the game. So for me to come back to America 22 years later with my Premier League experience, I think I had a good sense of knowing the American culture, but also knowing from the Premier League, how to. The Premier League is the biggest league in the world, and trying to take some of those lessons I learned from Spurs and West Brom and apply them to Atlanta United.
Well, of course, biggest, best league in the world, Premier League. But then you look at the numbers that you guys have achieved. I mean, you guys are the new kids on the block in terms of an MLS team, but some of your stats and figures are astounding without almost a ball being kicked.
Yeah, really, amazing. So our first game of the season, we had 55,000 came to our first match, and we were the fourth biggest game in the world that weekend. So you had Manchester United, Borussia Dortmund, and FC Barcelona, and then Atlanta United was the fourth biggest attendance that weekend. So that sent us sort of reverberations around America. But we've kept it going. We've sold out every game so far in a temporary venue. We're averaging 46,500, which in Europe would put us 24th. And I love the fact that PSG would be 25th. So just that little club in Paris are just trying to sort of catch us. But, it's been incredible to see just the way that the city's got behind the team.
Because that was one of the fundamental things I think that you've spoken about publicly about Arthur Blank, and for it to be a stadium for the city of Atlanta. And actually what's new is the fact that because it's a new team, there wasn't any of that problem of legacy. You could create your own culture, not just on the field, but actually it started off the field 3 years ahead of the league start playing in the league.
Yeah, look, for me, the big attraction, when I got the opportunity to go to Atlanta, to start something up from scratch, obviously a team like Tottenham Hotspur, West Bromwich Albion, my two previous clubs, have been around over 125 years. Atlanta didn't even have a minor league club. This was a totally brand new project, so that was really exciting. But what Arthur Blank, our owner, did, and it's 100% to do with him, is he gave us the runway to be able to develop the team. So I was hired 2.5 years before we kicked a ball. Now, the usual approach for an owner would be, I'm going to wait till the last possible moment because the revenue doesn't kick in till we start playing games. But Arthur built up Home Depot from scratch. So he was someone that had seen a business develop as a startup. So he understood that you never get another chance to launch a club. So he was determined to give us the best chance possible. So I think that was a big factor. The other thing about Atlanta is a lot of people had said it wasn't a sporting city. It's a city of transplants. People have come from somewhere else. So if you go to a Falcons game and they're playing Green Bay, a third of the stadium is Green Bay Packers fans because of the legacy of the Packers. I think for us, what was perceived as a weakness has actually been a strength, because in Atlanta, we've got this young millennial audience. And if you're from Philadelphia, you might be an Eagles fan because your dad took you to the Eagles when you were younger, but you haven't built up an allegiance to a soccer team.
That tribalism to be with one
Yeah,
club.
so what we found is we've sort of hit this nerve where Atlanta United is Atlanta's team that the whole city's getting behind. And we've seen that with the numbers of people coming out, flags in the city, just the general sort of scale of the support we've had. So I think it's almost been a lightning rod for the whole city to get behind and say, look, this is our team. And for me, it's been great because it's changed this narrative and lazy narrative that Atlanta's not a sporting city. Atlanta is an amazing city, 6.5 million. It's exciting, young, growing city, and now we're getting, this story around the country that it is a sporting city.
It is interesting when you look at the demographic of Atlanta and what Arthur Blank has tried to do, because, like you say, first and foremost, he wanted it to be established as a sporting city. And I guess the Olympics were that very starting base for it. But then when you look at the infrastructure, I think it's some incredible stat of 80% of the American population live within a 2-hour flight of Atlanta's airport, which is the busiest in America.
That's right, yeah. So busiest in the world. So Atlanta is an airport hub, busiest in the world. The stadium. So Arthur took took a risk to build it downtown. So the Braves was the baseball team in Atlanta, and they moved out to the suburbs. Arthur chose to build his stadium in downtown, and that was because he saw the importance of that stadium to the city. And for us, it's really exciting. So coming up, Atlanta has 2018, the college football championship game. That's coming up in January. In 2019, it hosts the Super Bowl. In 2020, it hosts the NCAA Final Four basketball. So we'll shut the roof and have a basketball court and have 85,000 for the Final Four. No city's ever had those three events back to back to back. So already by building the stadium where he has, it's bringing these events to Atlanta. And we're really excited if America can get the 2026 World Cup. Clearly, this is a venue that's got a real chance of hosting one of the big games because, as you mentioned, you've got within a 2-hour flight, 80% of the country can get there. We've got 10,000 hotel rooms within a quarter of a mile of the stadium. So you've got this ability to host it in the city and have that walking, exciting sort of, not just the event itself, but the paraphernalia around it.
Yeah, and it is that, so often people talk about redeveloping stadiums and they put them outside of the city, and just as a microcosm, Ashton Gate was decided to be built in the city, and actually you do see the benefits of that, not least from the infrastructure being able to support it from hotels and transport, but I guess also from that buy-in from the fan that it feels like it's their home in their home.
Exactly, and for us it's really important for Atlanta United because we have a much younger demographic than the Falcons, and a lot of our millennials are living in downtown. This is happening across all urbanization in America, where those millennials don't want to have cars, they want to live in downtown or live close to the hubs where we have a metro, which is our underground. So they're living by the metro stations and coming into the downtown area. So for us, we're hitting our key fan base as well, which is really positive.
So talk us through hitting that key fan base, because this was a fan base that you had to build from zero when you landed in Atlanta. It's almost, when we were talking earlier, I think it's almost like an Olympics thing where you have to keep traction and keep talking to your audience before this once every 4-year event. How did you do that? How did you get the buy-in and the engagement and deliver them events without a stadium?
Yeah, so I started about 2.5 years ago, and it was interesting. Even then, we had about 10,000 people that had signed up as deposits to be a founding member. So our big approach was we didn't try to go after the sitting on the fence fan. We didn't want to go after perhaps the college American football fan or the baseball fan. We wanted to go after our hardcore avid fans, make them feel part of the club and build from them. So we tried to create events. So whether it was viewing parties for Premier League matches, perhaps it was American national team, Mexico, when there was Gold Cup matches, World Cup matches. We have parades, there's big parades in Atlanta. We would put our supporters and set up events for that. So, we laugh about it now, but it's almost, I think the book I'll write is Pub Crawl Your Way to Success, because I literally spent nearly every day with a beer in my hand in front of our supporters. And we've just about trying to create that club culture, that it was their club. So Boxing Day, for example, we did a big thing every Boxing Day where you could bring your club scarf in and we'd give you an Atlanta one and we'd raffle the scarves off for charity. But it was really just about creating these events and moments that people felt part of the club. And as we sort of built and got nearer and nearer to our first game, that 10,000 deposits turned into 36,500 season ticket holders. But the cool thing is everyone feels like it's still their club. And I'll give you one other example. When we were converting our deposits into season ticket holders, we could have just sold them online, and millennials now love that, no sort of personal contact, but we didn't. We took in blocks of 500. You had to come in, you could either come in and visit a sales rep or talk on the phone, because we wanted to have that individual relationship. Now we had the time to do that, but we took it over a 6-month period and we talked to every single one of our fans about their seat, where they'd like to be in the stadium. And what that did was it created that connection again. So there was that feeling that they already had a rep at the club that was their contact. So now fast forward to coming into the new stadium, they know that whether it's Tracy or it's Ken that they dealt with, that's the person that they have that contact with, that they sort of feel like they've got a connection.
So despite the astonishing number of season cards that you've got, I think Tottenham would be fairly jealous with that one. I'm sure you've been quite happy to share it. The idea that they could have personal contact time, most clubs in England could never do that, because actually everyone's trying to push it online because there just isn't enough time to service the demand.
Yeah, look, I think my biggest learning coming from the Premier League into America and with Major League Soccer and Atlanta United is we had to focus 100% on fan engagement, because we can't take for granted. It's not like it is here in this country where everybody loves soccer. You've got a club, historically you're going to be a Tottenham fan or a West Brom fan or Arsenal fan, so that sort of allegiance is already built. we're fighting against other professional sports and college sports. College American football in the South, and particularly in Atlanta, is huge. So we had to fight for every fan. And so what that does is it changes your whole filter and focus for how you deal with things. So everything we did was fan focused. We have a brand new stadium, and it's an amazing stadium, 1.5 billion. The food and beverage, it's $2 for hot dogs. We've done fan-friendly pricing. It's $2 for a Coke, and you can refill as many times as you want. And the idea behind that was we wanted to make it the best fan experience for both our American football fans and for the United fans. And the view was from Arthur at the very top, it shouldn't be like a cinema or other sporting venues where you're trying to fleece your customers. We want them to come in here with a family and be able to have that, Coke, fries, and a drink for less than $40. And the reality is, we know if they're going to spend it, they'll spend it in the merchandise. But don't try and make the fans feel like they've been fleeced or that you've sort of taken unfair advantage of them. So everything has been about that fan-friendly sort of focus.
You talk about the merchandise. It seems like a good time to come in on that, because again, the numbers that you've had with launching a brand have been quite astounding in terms of the traction you've got, actually not just competing within the MLS and the established teams, but actually competing with all the sports.
Yeah, we saw there's a few slides earlier when we did our kit launch. So we did our kit launch November before we started to play in March. So we did it big, sort of 5,000 in a theatre. Chris McCann at the time came over to do the launch. He was playing for Coventry, but we got permission to fly him in, and he'd obviously never seen anything like this sort of razzmatazz, confetti. And again, this was an example. We didn't have a team, so anything like a kit launch was a chance for us to get our fans together and celebrate the moment. So we didn't have a team in 2016. We were the third biggest seller of merchandise in that 2 months that we were in existence. We were beating another 18 of the teams already in MLS. This year, everything's sold centrally through MLS.com. We're 1 in 4 sales is Atlanta United. So 25% of all sales is our club. It's just been incredible to see the level of...
And like within any sporting group, there's always competition within the two sports. Of course, your bigger older brother are the Falcons, and it must have been quite satisfying to know that you were trumping them as well in the in-store shop. Your merchandising was selling out far more.
Yeah, off the back of the Atlanta Falcons making the Super Bowl last year, we have a joint shop in downtown. So it's in an area that I'd say is much more demographics towards our fans. But it's a joint shop selling both Falcons and United. And this year, at the moment, to date, 93% is United gear. So it just shows you, there's just it's almost like a cult fever around the team, because the merchandise, it's just what the kids and young people in Atlanta are wearing around the city, and we're just trying to ride it as best we can.
Well, it seems to be working. You talk about the buy-in of fan engagement, and a lot about the millennials and the younger generation, but it is always that ignore your history at your peril. And that is something that you guys have very carefully made sure that there are references to Atlanta's background and history, like with the railway connection.
Yeah, look, one of the interesting things was, I've had 2 sort of main jobs off the pitch, building the club up. So whether that's the kit, the name, how we sort of deal with the supporter rituals around a match. But also you've got the team on the pitch. But off the field, this is Bobby Dodd, you can see in the background here. So this is 55,000 at our home opener. But our fans had never been to a game, so... And
you hadn't planned on being in there, so
no.
This was the temporary ground, effectively.
So what we tried to look at was how can we try to create sort of rituals and culture early on that was authentic, that was fan-led, and so we talked a lot with our supporters group. So we have 4 main supporters groups that have built up since the team was announced, and they're the fans that you see here in our sort of main area at the back. And so one of the themes is Atlanta started as a railway town. It was formerly called Terminus because it was the end of a railway line. So we took the theme of a golden spike. So where 2 railways meet, a golden spike's put in the ground. So that became our sort of totem that we were building around. So we do a couple of things. Before the game, we have a massive golden spike that's built up, and our team comes off the bus, they walk past the golden spike, they sign it, and then all our fans get to sign it. Then we bring it into the stadium, and we have a celebrity fan who hits a hammer that knocks it in. So, and the whole fans get behind this. So we've had a lot of the rappers from Atlanta Atlanta have come around. We're pretty excited. I can't name who it's going to be on the 10th, but it's going to be a big star that's doing that. So here it is. So this is Vic Beasley, who's one of the top Falcons players. So he hits the spike, and the fans go ATL as he hits the spike in. So that became their chant. So we worked around that. But then post-match, we wanted to have some connection between the fans and the team. So our fans vote a player to be their golden spike winner. So it's their man of the match, so to speak, at the end of the game. And win, lose or draw, that player comes to the fans, actually steps up onto a platform to receive the spike, and then he hits it into, we have a railway track with 17 holes for the 17 matches we'll play, and he hammers that spike into the railway. He gets to keep one as a memento to take home. But then that railway line will get put in our new stadium, and then in 20 years' time, we'll have 20 years' worth of history. But it's our way of trying to create a culture, something different. But the important thing was win, lose, or draw. So we lost our first home game. Obviously gutted because we were 1-0 up, and we lost the Red Bulls.
If only they stuck to the script that we always prepare for comms and media.
But actually, I mean, looking back, it was probably the best thing because everyone was still excited, and our man of the match for that game, Yamil Assad, who scored our first goal, still came to the fans, got the sort of celebration of the fans, and it created that connection, and that's what we want, because we're not going to win every game, but win, lose or draw, our players go to our fans, and they have this almost symbolic meeting of the players with the fans, and that for me was something that was important to try and establish a ritual and a culture around that. So I'm pretty excited the way it's gone, and now, a bit like the Spinal Tap movie, we can turn it to 11, because we go to this new $1.5 billion stadium, so the stuff we'll be able to do with the new stadium around these themes is going to be pretty cool.
You talk about the culture and how often the fans are often the ones that will save you or help you in certain scenarios, and things, as you say, never quite go according to plan. I think it's quite interesting your take on the commercial side of it, of making sure it is affordable. It's interesting what you've done with the 2 corporate boxes as well, which actually came from a mistake, if you want to share that experience.
Yeah, so it was our 3rd game at Bobby Dodd, and the national anthem singer, the microphone broke. So we had that little awkward pregnant pause where he was singing and no one could hear him. And then the whole stadium just joined in to sing the national anthem. So what could have been a disaster turned into a very cool moment for, the fans. And so that's become a bit of a tradition where the fans now are singing it, which doesn't tend to happen in American sporting events. Usually you've got a singer will come in and they'll sing it in their style. But we've now going to take it to the new stadium where we have touchdown suites. So behind the goal, we've got 8 corporate boxes. We've taken the 2 middle ones out, and so we've bought out those.
Which are prime location.
Yeah, we bought those out. We've built what we call a capo stand. So that's where our supporter will lead the singers during a game. But we're also going to have our anthem singer sing the national anthem from that stand. So in effect, they're going to sing it with the fans. So that's something we've taken from, our very short history, admittedly. But now, when we do our national anthem, the singer, and whether it's Elton John, who we're hoping will come because he's got a house in Atlanta, he'll sing it with the fans. So the whole idea is that this is taking something that's sort of born out of the culture of our fans and now taking it to the next level. But also, again, it's understanding that, yes, we could have sold those 2 corporate boxes, but it's much more important to our fans, to the atmosphere, and to the storytelling that we use that for the fans themselves. And, hopefully that's something in years to come that becomes something that's known about Atlanta United. Wow, yeah, did you see whoever is the next big act? They're actually in the fans singing the national anthem.
Yeah. And in terms of talking about the fans a lot, obviously a football team, all of us know when we've been in, you have all these great plans in place and then you go and lose or have a terrible performance on the pitch, which you can't control. And it becomes a very different proposition. It's interesting that just as you were in place 2.5 years before a ball was kicked, actually where you started with your actual team was with the academy.
Yeah, so that was something, again, and I'll give great credit to Arthur Blank, our owner, because when I came in, my vision was, look, the MLS has done a great job getting to where it is, but I felt there was a chance to go to the next level. And by that, there's a couple of things. One, academy, really important to focus on homegrown players, because America has this massive population of very talented soccer players. So the earlier we could start our academy, the earlier we could get those players under our guidance, under our sort of coaching philosophy, then the pipeline begins and you can get those players into your team. But the other thing for me was I felt that time was right to try and attract those players rather than at the end of their career. So the Frank Lampard, Steven Gerrard, even the David Beckham when he came as the first designated player in Major League Soccer, I felt the time was right to go after those younger players and say, look, you can come to Atlanta. It could be a couple of years, 3 years, develop your career, and if you do well, you're going to be in the spotlight, you're going to be in the shop window, no different from my time at Tottenham or West Brom, we'll be happy to sell you to Real Madrid for a lot of money like Gareth Bale. And it's good for everyone, because for us, it means that we're going to be able to reinvest those funds in new players. But also we're showing that the league can be a development for younger players, not just an end of the sort of career league. So we went for 3 players under 23, and look, it's really exciting. We're in the playoff position now as we sit with 10 games to go, 8 of them at home. We're in a really good place to make the playoffs. Our 3 designated players have all scored between them 30 goals, so they've hit the ground running.
So it's exciting football.
And it's young, dynamic, and it's different. You know, so for our fan base, I think now we'd have real pushback. If we said we're now going to be signing a player who's a 34, 35-year-old, at the end of the career, they would feel like almost we were selling them down the river, because they bought into this younger, dynamic team.
Do you think that MLS as a whole is now, this is the start of almost a sea change within it? Because as you say, traditionally the view has been, it did tend to be those sort of marquee signings from overseas that are sort of towards the tail end of a career.
Definitely is. So even if you look at the last transfer window, there was only one of the players signed that was over 30. So you're seeing it across the board now, and that's a great thing, because as a league, the biggest focus for Major League Soccer now is how do we get the talent level higher? How do we get the product quality on the pitch? Off the field, commercially it's going well. Even attendance-wise, we're the 6th biggest league in the world. So on those metrics, we're up there as a top 10 league, but we have to get the quality of play better. And the way to do that, in my view, is to attract that younger talent and say, look, you know, there's no shame in saying that we're a stepping stone at the moment to Europe, and there's lots of advantages. If we take players to Atlanta, they can have a couple of years, they learn English, they've got a chance to show that they can move to a foreign league, and it takes some of the risk out of those European clubs taking those players. Now, hopefully in 10 years' time, we're at a late stage where players are staying because the league's got bigger, but we have to get the talent pool up. And the way to do that, in my view, is to take that younger talent, whether it's from South America, whether it's from Asia, use it as a sort of ground to develop it, and then sell it on to those bigger clubs.
Well, the fans seem to be enjoying it. Looking at your attendance numbers so far, they must have exceeded even your expectations, I guess, because when you talked about this digital curtain that would come down over the upper tier, that was actually originally designed for when you were playing the soccer games rather than the football games, so it would feel like there wasn't a big empty cavernous space above them. But actually, I think you're looking at actually opening it all up for that first game.
So I mean, look, originally it was going to be 29,000, so there's 3 tiers at the stadium. The lower bowl was about 29,000, so it was originally envisaged that that would be the soccer capacity. We're now 36,500 season ticket holders, so we had to go higher. So the next level is about 42,500. So that would be our traditional Atlanta United capacity. And we have curtains that come down vertically on the upper bowl that is branded Atlanta United. So you'll come to a typical Atlanta United game and it will look and feel like a different stadium than perhaps on a Sunday going to a Falcons game. But we've had such interest that in 2 weeks' time we're going to open the whole stadium and we're going to try and hopefully break the record. So 69,225, not that I'm counting, is the record for LA Galaxy in the very first year the league was in existence. So 22 years old now, that record stood. Our aim is to try and get 70,000 plus for that game against Orlando and set a single game attendance record.
One does get a sense of your competitiveness as a footballer, retired or otherwise. That weekend, I'm interested because as someone that works in a multi-sport stadium where we have a tight turnaround, the tightest one I think we've had was Premiership rugby game on a Friday night, and then an early kick-off on the Saturday for Bristol City. How do you liaise with your counterparts, the stadium operator, the manager, the ground staff? How does that dynamic work at the moment? All fine at the moment?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. So it's all theoretical at the moment, but so we've had at the moment, so there's been 2 Falcons pre-season games in the stadium. We've had 1 college football game a couple of days ago, and there's 1 today. And then we've got a bit of time. There's 5 days before we have our first soccer game. So that's going to be quite easy. It's the weekend after when we're going to be playing Orlando on the Saturday, and then on the Sunday it's the Falcons against Green Bay Packers in the first regular season game. So that's going to be the sort of crunch time. But look, we spent a lot of time thinking through the stadium. So we don't have any lines on the pitch. Everything is lined specifically for the game. And actually going from soccer to American football is a little bit easier because it's American football that has a lot more paint on the ground. So we'll have our soccer lines Saturday evening. We'll take those off. That should be fairly straightforward. We have these retractable seats that we'll push back in. We won't have the curtains down for the Orlando game because we're hoping it's going to be 70,000. So we're hoping that it should go fairly smoothly. But yeah, famous last words. We'll see when it actually happens.
And I mean, I guess you cannot wait to see what the stadium looks like full, but also with your roof structure as well, because that's quite innovative.
Yeah, and that's the one thing. So, you know, you can see the roof here. It's in 8 different petals that moves together. So it looks like a camera shutter shutting, and at the moment we're manually opening and closing it. So it's going to be automated. It'll take about 11 minutes for the roof to open to close. The moment we had some delays when we were building it, so the roof works, but it's not actually operational from an automatic perspective. So we can manually open and close it. Over the next month, we're going to make those changes so that it'll be push of a button 11 minutes. But for our first game, we're going to have it closed, which I'm pretty excited about because the noise that you get...
The atmosphere will be incredible.
It's going to just be so loud. And so I'm pretty excited because it's funny, when we go back to Bobby Dodd, where we played temporarily our first games, there was no roof on that stadium. But a lot of our fans were saying, will the atmosphere be as good at the new stadium? My view is, one, we're going to have a roof, so the noise is going to just get refracted in. And then secondly, we've got 12,640 beer taps. So everyone can get a drink. At Bobby Dodd, the stadium we're at, was wonderful, but it was really difficult to get a beer because it was just not capable of dealing with the level of support. So we're going to have drunken fans with the roof, so I think it's just going to be a lot rowdier and a lot noisier.
Excellent. I'm aware of the time of day. So we're on that note, drunken fans. I might open it to the floor if there's, I'm sure there's lots of questions. Oh, the gentleman at the front here with the first question in the white shirt.
Thank you, Darren. I'm John Lyda from Hoover, Alabama.
Oh, hey, John.
We're neighbors. And I know you said you opened the stadium in 6 days, but our Alabama
Roll
Crimson
Tide,
Tide, we opened the stadium Saturday night with a victory. I'm curious on your perspective as to, and I think you made a very poignant point about the diversity of some of the southern cities, including Atlanta, Birmingham, Nashville, and Charlotte. What does Atlanta United bring to the southeastern United States that those other cities may can capitalize on, particularly in some of the smaller division of Major League Soccer?
Yeah, I think, John, I mean, it's a great question. So, you know, the myth was Atlanta wasn't a big sporting city, and I think there was nervousness about the South generally and soccer. And so I think the one thing that I feel quite proud about Atlanta United's done is it's clearly shown that soccer is huge all over the country. But actually, I'd say arguably in the Southeast, it's become a lightning rod for support. I mean, Nashville's been getting some crazy numbers in terms of the US national team. So I do think from that marketplace, I think we've shown that soccer, it's just a whole new audience. And so let's take the Atlanta Falcons. The season ticket crossover is about 4%. So this is just a totally different, it's a different audience. It's a younger demographic. It's much more international. It's Hispanic. It's just showing the new America. And I think that's clear across the whole of the Southeast. So I think that, I'll use another example. Chattanooga's about 2 hours away, hour and a half from Atlanta. They're playing in Division 4 amateur soccer. They got 20,000 to a playoff game last year. So, you know, I think you're seeing that this is a phenomenon that is just soccer in America is reaching new heights. But I think it's really good. You know, I'll take Nashville. I think Nashville in MLS was considered as an outsider 18 months ago. Now they're one of the forefront in terms of those teams that could get a team, because people are seeing the numbers in the South and realizing that this is a marketplace that's ripe for soccer.
Thanks, Darren. Keegan Pierce from La Liga. As time's gone by, I think the formula that Major League Soccer looks for as the ideal city for expansion has changed over time. And each new expansion team is a laboratory unto itself. What do you think are the lessons that the folks running MLS are taking from the Atlanta United experience as they look at the next round of cities that could be ideal places to place the next teams?
I think the biggest takeaway, and I think probably a change from perhaps the focus originally, so they would obviously look at stadium, they looked at media markets, they tried to look at demographics. I think, and Don Garber would admit it, he was fairly skeptical about Atlanta in the initial stages, but he spoke to Arthur Blank, and Arthur said, look, I'm telling you, this city's ready for it. I think it's the owner. I genuinely think, you know, let's take ourselves as an example. This was an owner, Arthur Blank, that hired me 2.5 years before we kicked a ball. He set the academy up a year before the first team even started. And traditionally, the view might be from an owner, well, the revenue doesn't start till we start selling tickets. When's the last possible moment I can start the academy? We had a stadium plan, you know, ready that, you know, 1.5 billion, but there's a lot of money put in making it soccer specific. So I think all of those factors, and then we've built a training ground, some slides we showing that earlier, 60 million that we spent on a training ground. So I think that's the new era. You know, you can come in and pay the expansion fee, but are you an ownership that's committed to the medium to long term for soccer? Because this isn't something you're going to make an immediate financial gain from, but certainly as the league gets bigger and that investment will pay dividends medium to long term, I think that's what MLS is going to be looking at in the new ownership groups. It's not just the media market, it's not just have you got a stadium plan, but are you an ownership group that's committed and has the resources to spend on some of these things like a training ground, like designated players? Thanks.
Another question.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Bumi. I actually live in Atlanta, and I've been to the stadium a couple of times. My question to you, Darren, is do you think because of the success of what the fans and what have you Atlanta United is doing, is that going to open up opportunity for having maybe like a women's professional soccer team, a USL team, you know, under the umbrella of Atlanta United? Have you guys talked about something, stuff like that? You know?
Yeah, I mean, thanks, Boone. That's a great question. I mean, at the moment, we were focused on Atlanta United and getting the new team up and running, and obviously getting a new stadium off the ground. It's been a frantic sort of 18, 24 months. But I think, look, something down the line, we've seen how big soccer is in Atlanta. You know, Atlanta United has found this connection with the city, with the fans. So I think, you know, whether it's USL team, whether it's women's soccer, I think down the line that's something that I'd be surprised if that isn't in our plans in the future. You know, it's something that at the moment we're focusing on this season, and fingers crossed we can make the playoffs and be that first team since Seattle to make the playoffs in their first year. But, you know, I think there's great excitement about soccer generally in Atlanta and what we might be able to do in the future.
Any other questions? Oh, yes, gentleman in front.
Thank you. Hey, I'm Henry from the Football Business Academy. Going back to the stadium itself, can you tell us more about the unique features that you have and how these features will generate additional revenue to the stadium?
Yeah, so I think first thing is, you know, trying to make it that we can use it for different events. So we've spoken about American football and obviously the Atlanta United soccer, but you know, for us it was about how can we make it flexible for whether it's concerts. The roof is a good example. I mean, putting a roof on, it's fantastic. It looks amazing. It was bloody expensive to do it, and it's been tricky from an engineering feat to do that. But because we can now seal it and weatherproof the stadium, we can host the NCAA Final Four basketball. So it opens up a whole new sort of ability for whether it's concerts, other sporting events. So that was something that was really important. The Halo board I spoke a little bit about, and you just can see it here. This massive 6-story building high the whole way around. You know, when we talk about things like esports and the ability to host those type of events, you know, we've got a real chance to do it. The other thing that's important about that is it's not like Dallas's stadium where the scoreboard takes away from the viewing event. So when you're watching a game at the new Mercedes-Benz Stadium, yes, you've got this massive Halo board, but it's not in your eye line. It's up there. You have to actually look for it. You're still focused on the game itself. I think one of the things with AT&T Stadium in Dallas is it's so overwhelming because of the sightline of the scoreboard that you almost find yourself watching the telly, and it's just like watching a big TV, and you're not watching the sporting event. So that was another feature that was important to us. But you know, the fan-friendly pricing is a big one for us. So when we bid for the Super Bowl in 2019 is coming to Atlanta. It'll be $2 unlimited refills for that event. We made it part of the bid process that we weren't prepared to put the prices up. So any event that comes in the stadium has to have those fan-friendly prices. So I think that is something that's going to really amaze the fans. And for us, we feel it makes Atlanta a real sort of destination for not just, you know, soccer, not just American football, but any sporting event that you're looking to create that wow factor, bring it to Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
It's one of the things we haven't talked about as well is the pitch and the fully weatherized pitch. But I guess you've almost done the opposite of what Tottenham have done. They've gone for a retractable pitch, haven't they, with their one with NFL coming to town, and then it's sliding underneath their stadium build. You guys are looking to host events on the pitch that aren't actually using the pitch like basketball.
That's right, and we've got these retractable seats. So our approach was to have the retractable seats, so that gives us that full width, so that you have the ability to host. We're hoping in 2026 the World Cup would be great, to come to North America and to come to Atlanta. But yeah, so that was part of the philosophy, because a lot of American venues where they play soccer, the sight lines aren't great because you're sticking it into an NFL stadium, which is actually a lot narrower than you would have for a traditional stadium. So the way that we dealt with that was to build in those retractable seats, which again was something that took the foresight of our owner and came at a considerable expense to do that, but is going to pay dividends in years to come.
There's a lady there as well, actually. But just 1 second. If we just go to the lady with blonde hair over there, and then we'll come back for a second.
Hi, I'm Stephanie. I run an agency in Switzerland. I'm actually from Houston, so I'm a Southern girl. And I grew up in Texas and went to University of Texas with a Longhorn Stadium of 70,000 or something. So I thought the numbers were impressive, but I've never seen anything like this, I have to say. Fantastic. I have some experience working in the MLS. I've placed players there over the last few years. And, I mean, of course, we're aware of the salary caps and the designated player limits, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm just wondering, I followed the Almidón signing, fantastic, phenomenal player, well done. And I'm just wondering, my question is there more on the horizon to do, or is Atlanta going to be the club with the biggest pocketbooks going forward in terms of, do you still have more ambitious signings to take place? What would you say to those fellow agents knocking on your door in terms of what kind of goods should we be coming up with?
Yeah, look, you're right about the salary cap. So totally different environment from what I was used to in the Premier League. So we have a salary cap and then 3 designated players that you can pay over and above the cap. But what the MLS did that was quite clever is, and not to get into the weeds, but there's target allocation money. So think of it almost as monopoly money, that every club gets a certain amount that they can use to buy down salaries. And what that did was, the top 3 players, designated players, are obviously going to be good players. Then you had a whole sort of rest of the squad that were under a salary cap. So there was a big jump in quality from player 3 to player 4. With this target allocation money, we can go after players. We've got a guy, Leandro Gonzalo Perez, who played in Argentina, was at Estudiantes. He's come in as that sort of target allocation money. Brad Guzan, playing at Middlesbrough. He allows us to bring in players that fill sort of roster spots 4 to almost 9 in that extra level of quality. So we're absolutely looking to still build on it. And I think the exciting thing for us is we've got 3 players all under the age of 23 or younger, all doing really well, who we all hope at some stage are going to get some offers from those big clubs in Europe. And then for us, the next thing is we've now got a proof of concept. So when I was going to Almiron, it was difficult because I was saying, we've got this wonderful stadium. It's not built yet, but it's going to be great. We've got this training ground that's magnificent. Not built yet, but it's going to be good. Miguel was saying, well, who's the coach going to be? Don't know yet, but he'll be really good, I promise you. So it was a bit like you were selling sunshine. Now we've got Tata Martino, coach Barcelona, Argentina, as our coach. We've got this $60 million facility training center. We've got the $1.5 billion stadium. So it's a heck of a lot easier when I'm going to meet with the players and their agents to say, look, we're really serious about developing your career. And we're not shy about the fact that come here for 2 years, prove yourself and move on. And I think that's the next step and the next evolution in Major League Soccer. So we'll have to have a chat afterwards, Stephanie.
I think Bumi had a second question down at the front.
The economic impact when you guys were at your temporary site at Bobby Dobbs Stadium, so you saw consistently sold out, in that part of Atlanta. So now moving forward, into the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, what is the projected economic impact that you think you're going to see? Because obviously a lot of the things that you saw in Bobby Dobb was not expected. Yeah. So now with such a high demand and with all the records that you've broken, now like what is this new wave of economic impact? What is Atlanta going to see, or what are you projecting?
Well, look, I think it's amazing. And if we take a step back, so when Arthur Blank was planning the stadium, Atlanta Falcons played 10 games if you include the 2 preseason games. never in anyone's wildest dreams would you think that in 2018 there'll be more Atlanta United fans in Mercedes-Benz Stadium than there will be Falcons, because we'll have 17 games of roughly 50,000. So there'll be more actual Atlanta United fans going downtown, spending their money in the bars, looking to sort of go to dinner after matches. So that whole sort of economic revival of downtown and trying to increase the exposure is a little bit unexpected. You know, we thought we were going to be successful. We never dreamt that it would be as big as it is. But the other great thing about it, and one of the big factors, is we have an area called the West Side, and Bomi, you'll know this from, it's an area that is very close to the stadium. That it was a real important focus of Arthur to try and regenerate that area, but regenerate it in a way that wasn't just gentrifying that area with businesses coming in and evicting the people that live there, but how could you sort of use this new stadium to help those people? So one of the things we did was called the West Side Works Project. And so this started about 3 years ago. We trained people to be able to work on the construction site during the actual building of the stadium. And then we were also spinning off in cooking, healthware, car repairs. So what we're trying to do is give people jobs, so then they're bringing their salary and they're bringing that back, and they're staying in the area, but they're generating revenue, and also the dignity and respect of having a job. And then another thing we did was we built houses for police officers. So the idea then was crime was an issue. We were encouraging police officers to live in the area, and then that automatically made crime reduced in that area. So these were real tangible differences. So not just saying, okay, we're going to hope Starbucks comes and builds coffee shops there and the whole area gentrifies, but keeping the people there, but trying to make a real difference to their lives. And that's something that, you know, we're really proud of, that we're making that difference to the West Side. Now, it's a long project. It's not something that's going to happen overnight, but it's something that's a real focus to Arthur, because Arthur Blank's legacy is not just the stadium itself, but, you know, how can he help that West Side area and change people's lives there?
And I think if no one else has any other burning questions, I'm sure lots of people want to talk to you. Also, lots of people will probably want to get to the networking bar.
Exactly. Yes.
Darren Eales, thank you very much. It's been fascinating. I could talk all evening to you, but thank you very much, and very best of luck with the first home game.
Thanks, Lisa.